The night was thick with tension as 17-year-old Jamal Carter walked home from his part-time job at the local grocery store. His backpack, heavy with textbooks, dug into his shoulders as he turned the corner onto Maple Street. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that made his skin prickle. He adjusted his hoodie, pulling it tighter against the chiller. Maybe it was the unease settling in his gut. A police cruiser rolled past him, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Jamal kept his head down, his mother's words echoing in his mind. "Don't give them a reason, baby. Just get home safe." But the cruiser slowed. Then it stopped. The doors swung open, and two officers stepped out. Officer Rick Dawson, a burly man with a permanent scowl, and his partner, Officer Dean Holloway, younger but just as hardened. Their boots crunched against the pavement as they approached. "Hey, kid," Dawson called out, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "Where you headed this late?" Jamal swallowed. "Just going home, sir." Holloway circled him like a predator. "That so? You live around here?" "Yeah, just a few blocks down." Jamal gestured vaguely, his pulse quickening. Dawson's eyes narrowed. "Mind if we take a look in that bag?" Jamal hesitated. He knew his rights. But he also knew what happened to black boys who talked back. "I didn't do anything wrong," he said carefully. Holloway smirked. "Then you won't mind showing us." Before Jamal could respond, Dawson yanked the backpack off his shoulders, spilling his books onto the sidewalk. Jamal's heart pounded as the officers rifled through his things, their gloved hands invasive and rough. "Nothing here," Holloway muttered, disappointed. But Dawson wasn't done. He grabbed Jamal's wrist, twisting it painfully. "You got any drugs on you? Weapons?" "No, I swear." "Shut up." Dawson shoved him against the cruiser, patting him down with unnecessary force. Jamal's breath came in short gasps as the cold metal pressed into his cheek. Then Holloway's radio crackled. "We got a report of a robbery a few blocks over. Black male, hoodie, jeans." Dawson grinned. "Well, look at that. Perfect match." Jamal's stomach dropped. "I didn't. I was at work. You can check." "Save it for the station," Dawson sneered, cuffing him. The ride to the precinct was a blur of flashing lights and muffled laughter. Jamal's mind raced. He had no record, no history of trouble, but none of that mattered now. When they arrived, the booking process was a haze of fingerprints and mugshots. The officers joked as they processed him, their words laced with venom. "Another one off the streets," Holloway said, slapping Dawson's back. Jamal's throat tightened. He thought of his mother, a hard-working nurse who'd sacrificed everything for him. What would she say when she got the call? Then the doors to the precinct swung open. A woman in a sharp black suit strode in, her heels clicking against the tile. The room fell silent. Judge Evelyn Carter's gaze swept over the scene before landing on her son. Jamal's breath caught. "Mom?" The officers froze. Dawson's face drained of color. Judge Carter's voice was ice. "What the hell is going on here?" Part 2. The Reckoning. The precinct fell into stunned silence as Judge Evelyn Carter stood in the doorway, her sharp eyes locked onto her son's frightened face. Jamal had never seen his mother like this, her usual warmth replaced by a cold, controlled fury that made even the officers shift uncomfortably. Officer Dawson was the first to recover, clearing his throat as he straightened his posture. "Judge Carter, we were just processing my son for a crime he didn't commit." Evelyn cut in, her voice low but razor-edged. She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the linoleum like a ticking clock. "Tell me, Officer Dawson, what exactly is the charge?" Dawson hesitated, his fingers twitching near his belt. "Suspicion of robbery. We had a description." "A description that fits half the black boys in this city," Evelyn snapped. She turned to the desk sergeant, who had been watching the exchange with wide eyes. "Sergeant Ruiz, pull up the call log. I want to see the exact description given." Ruiz swallowed but complied, typing quickly. The screen flickered, and after a tense moment, he read aloud, "Suspect described as a black male, late teens, dark clothing." Evelyn arched a brow. "That's it? No height? No distinguishing marks? Nothing?" Dawson shifted again. "He was in the area. And so were dozens of other people," Evelyn countered. She turned to Jamal, her expression softening just slightly. "Did they read you your rights?" Jamal shook his head. "No, Mom. They just threw me in the car." Evelyn's jaw tightened. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small recorder, placing it on the counter. Let's get one thing clear. I'm not here as a judge right now. I'm here as a mother. But if I find out my son's rights were violated, I will make sure every single one of you answers for it. Holloway, who had been silent until now, scoffed. With all due respect, Judge, your son was acting suspicious. We had reasonable cause. Evelyn turned to him slowly. Reasonable cause? Let's see. She pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. A security feed from the grocery store where Jamal worked appeared time, stamped less than an hour ago. This is my son, clocking out at 9:47 p.m. The robbery call came in at 10:05. The store is a 15-minute walk from where you stopped him. You do the math. The officers exchanged glances. Dawson's face darkened. Evelyn wasn't done. She turned to Ruiz again. I want the body cam footage from these two officers. Now. Ruiz paled. Judge, Twell need to clear that with the captain. Evelyn smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. By all means, call him. I'd love to hear his thoughts on unlawful detainment. The room grew heavier with each passing second. Jamal watched his mother, pride swelling in his chest, despite the fear still coiled in his stomach. He had always known she was a force, but seeing her like this unshakable, relentless was something else entirely. Finally, Dawson muttered, Fine, kid's free to go. Evelyn didn't move. Not so fast. She stepped closer to Dawson, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You're going to uncuff him. You're going to apologize. And then you're going to explain to your superiors why you thought harassing an innocent kid was a good use of taxpayer resources. Dawson's jaw clenched, but after a tense moment, he reached for his keys and uncuffed Jamal. The metal clicked open, and Jamal rubbed his wrists, his skin raw from the too tight restraints. Sorry, Dawson muttered, though the word sounded like it was being dragged out of him. Evelyn didn't acknowledge it. She placed a hand on Jamal's shoulder and guided him toward the door. But before they left, she turned back, her voice carrying across the room. This isn't over. Outside, the night air was a relief. Jamal exhaled shakily, his legs suddenly weak. Evelyn pulled him into a tight hug, her grip fierce. You okay? She murmured. Jamal nodded against her shoulder, but his voice cracked when he spoke. I didn't do anything wrong. I know, baby, Evelyn whispered. I know. She pulled back, cupping his face. But we're not letting this go. Those officers need to answer for what they did. Jamal swallowed hard. What are you going to do? Evelyn's eyes gleamed with determination. I'm going to make sure they never do this to anyone else's child again. As they walked to her car, Jamal glanced back at the precinct, his stomach churning. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every kid who'd ever been targeted for the color of their skin. And his mother wasn't just any judge. She was the one who would make them pay. The drive home was silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the police scanner Evelyn kept in her car. Jamal stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur past, his mind replaying the night's events on a loop. The rough grip of the officers, the cold metal of the cuffs, the way they had laughed like his fear was nothing. Evelyn's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She could feel the anger radiating off her son, and it matched the fire burning in her own chest. She had spent years on the bench, presiding over cases where the system failed people who looked like her, like Jamal. But tonight, it wasn't just another case. It was personal. When they pulled into their driveway, Evelyn turned off the engine but didn't move. We need to talk, she said quietly. Jamal exhaled. I know. Inside, the house was warm, the scent of lavender from the candles Evelyn liked to burn, still lingering in the air. Jamal dropped onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. Evelyn sat across from him, her posture rigid, her mind already working through the next steps. First, she said, I need you to tell me everything. From the moment they stopped you to the second I walked in, don't leave anything out. Jamal did. He described the way Dawson had yanked his backpack, the way Holloway had circled him like prey, the way they had ignored his protests. When he got to the part where Dawson had shoved him against the cruiser, his voice wavered. Evelyn's expression darkened, but she didn't interrupt. When he finished, she leaned forward. They didn't read you your rights. They didn't have probable cause. and they sure as hell didn't have a right to lay hands on you. She stood, pacing the length of the living room. This is textbook misconduct. Jamal watched her, the weight of the night pressing down on him. What are you going to do? Evelyn stopped pacing. I'm going to file a formal complaint, and I'm going to subpoena their body cam footage. Jamal frowned. You think they'll actually hand it over? Evelyn's smile was sharp. They won't have a choice. The next morning, Evelyn was at her office before sunrise. As a judge, she couldn't personally involve herself in an active investigation, but she knew the right people to call. Her first stop was the office of District Attorney Marcus Cole, an old friend from law school. Marcus was already waiting when she arrived, his expression grim. He had heard about Jamal's arrest through the precinct grapevine. Evelyn, he said, standing as she entered. I'm sorry. She didn't waste time. I need the body cam footage from Officers Dawson and Holloway last night. Marcus sighed. You know how this works. Internal Affairs has to... I don't care about procedure, Evelyn cut in. My son was illegally detained. I want that footage, and I want it today. Marcus studied her for a long moment before nodding. I'll see what I can do. By noon, Evelyn had the footage. She watched it in her office, her stomach twisting as she saw the way Dawson had manhandled Jamal, the way they had mocked him. But what made her blood run cold was what happened after the camera was turned off. The footage cut out abruptly, but not before she heard Dawson mutter, "Little punk's lucky we didn't teach him a real lesson." Evelyn's hands shook as she ejected the disc. This wasn't just misconduct. This was a threat. Meanwhile, Jamal was at school, trying to pretend everything was normal. But the whispers followed him down the hall. "Hey, Jamal," called Tyler Jacobs, a smirking senior who had never bothered to hide his disdain. "Heard you got arrested. What'd you do, steal a car?" Jamal kept walking, his fists clenched at his sides. Tyler laughed. "Or maybe they just saw your face and figured you were up to no good." Jamal spun around, his temper flaring. "Shut up, Tyler." Tyler's grin widened. "Make me." Before Jamal could respond, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. He turned to see Principal Harris, his expression stern. "Is there a problem here?" Tyler immediately put on his best innocent face. "No, sir. Just talking." Principal Harris glanced between them before sighing. "Jamal, my office. Now." As Jamal followed him, his stomach sank. He knew how this would go. Tyler would walk away tangent-free, and he'd be the one in trouble. Again. But when they reached the office, Principal Harris surprised him. He closed the door and sat down, his expression unreadable. "I heard about last night," he said quietly. Jamal tensed. "Yeah." Harris studied him. "You want to tell me what happened?" For the second time in less than 24 hours, Jamal found himself recounting the arrest. When he finished, Harris leaned back in his chair, his face troubled. "I believe you," he said finally, "and I'm sorry that happened." Jamal blinked. That wasn't the response he'd expected. Harris continued. "But you can't let people like Tyler get to you. They're looking for a reaction. Don't give them one." Jamal nodded, though the advice felt hollow. It wasn't that simple. Nothing ever was. When he got home that afternoon, Evelyn was waiting, her expression tight with barely contained fury. "We have a problem," she said, holding up a file. "Dawson and Holloway have a history." Jamal took the file, flipping through the pages. Complaints from other black teens, all dismissed. Excessive force allegations buried in paperwork. A pattern stretching back years. Evelyn's voice was steel. "This ends now." Evelyn spent the next 2 days buried in case files, cross-referencing every complaint ever filed against Dawson and Holloway. The more she dug, the worse it got. Officers with clean records on paper, but whispers in the precinct halls told a different story. She needed more than whispers, she needed proof. Meanwhile, Jamal tried to focus on school, but his mind kept drifting back to the arrest. The way Dawson's fingers had dug into his wrist. The way Holloway had smirked when they shoved him into the cruiser. He had always known the world wasn't fair, but now it felt like the weight of that unfairness was crushing him. At lunch, his best friend Malik slid into the seat across from him. "You good, man? You've been quiet." Jamal poked at his food. "Just thinking." Malik lowered his voice. "About the cops?" Jamal nodded. Malik's jaw tightened. They messed with the wrong one this time. Your mom's a judge. They're gonna regret it. Jamal wished he could believe that. But he had seen how these things played out. Cops got slaps on the wrist. Kids like him got records. That afternoon, Evelyn got a call from Marcus Cole. "We've got a problem," he said. "The body cam footage is missing." Evelyn's grip on the phone tightened. "What do you mean missing?" "Exactly what I said. The file was deleted. IT's trying to recover it, but..." Evelyn cut him off. "Convenient," Marcus sighed. "Look, without that footage, it's your word against theirs. And you know how this goes." Evelyn's voice was ice. "Then I'll find another way." She hung up and immediately dialed another number, Detective Lisa Nguyen, an old colleague who worked in internal affairs. Lisa answered on the second ring. "Evelyn," she said, her voice cautious. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." "I need your help," Evelyn said. Lisa exhaled. "I can't officially get involved. But, off the record, Dawson and Holloway have been on our radar for a while. There's a reason their complaints keep disappearing." Evelyn leaned forward. "Who's protecting them?" Lisa hesitated. "You didn't hear this from me. But their sergeant, Daniel Greer, has been burying complaints for years. He and Dawson go way back." Evelyn's pulse quickened. That was the thread she needed. "Thank you, Lisa." Lisa's voice dropped lower. "Be careful, Evelyn. These guys don't play clean." Evelyn hung up, her mind racing. If Greer was covering for them, she needed to go over his head. That evening, Jamal came home to find his mother at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She looked up, her eyes tired but determined. "Sit down," she said. "We need to talk." Jamal dropped his backpack and sat. "What's going on?" Evelyn pushed a file toward him. "I found something. Dawson and Holloway aren't just bad cops, they're part of a bigger problem." Jamal opened the file. Inside were reports of other arrests, all young black men, all with eerily similar stories. Stopped for no reason, roughed up, charges dropped later due to lack of evidence. Jamal's stomach twisted. "This is a lot," Evelyn nodded. "And it's not just them. Their Sergeant Greer has been helping cover it up." Jamal looked up. "So what do we do?" Evelyn's gaze hardened. "We take it public." Jamal blinked. "Wait, like to the news?" "Yes. If the system won't hold them accountable, we'll make sure the people do." Jamal hesitated. He knew what that meant. His name would be out there. His face. The whole world would know what happened. Evelyn reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "Only if you're ready. This is your story, Jamal. You decide how it's told." Jamal thought about the other boys in those files. Thought about how many more there might be. He took a deep breath. "Do it." The next morning, Evelyn called a reporter she trusted, Vanessa Cruz from the Tribune. By that afternoon, Vanessa was in their living room, listening as Jamal recounted the arrest in detail. When he finished, Vanessa's expression was grim. "This is bigger than just you, Jamal. This is a pattern, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." As Vanessa left, Jamal felt a strange mix of fear and relief. This was happening. There was no turning back now. That night, Dawson and Holloway were called into Greer's office. The sergeant's face was stormy as he tossed a copy of the Tribune's draft article onto his desk. "Care to explain this?" he growled. Dawson paled as he scanned the page. "This is bullshit. That kid's lying." Greer's voice dropped to a snarl. "Doesn't matter if he's lying. His mother's a judge, and now the press is involved. IA's gonna be all over us." Holloway shifted nervously. "So what do we do?" Greer leaned back, his eyes cold. "We control the narrative. And we make sure Jamal Carter's credibility is destroyed before this story ever sees print." The morning the Tribune article went live, Jamal's phone buzzed non-stop texts from friends, shocked classmates, even distant relatives reaching out. The headline was bold. "Judge's son exposes pattern of police misconduct." They thought they could get away with it. Evelyn had barely slept, her laptop open as she tracked the story's spread. By noon, it was trending locally. By 3, national outlets were picking it up. But the backlash came just as fast. A counter-article appeared on a conservative-leaning blog by midday. Teen with history of school discipline issues claims police brutality, judge mother pulls strings. The comment section was worse, filled with accusations that Jamal was a troublemaker, that Evelyn was using her position to shield him. Jamal sat on his bed, scrolling through the vitriol, his chest tight. "They're making it sound like I deserved it," he muttered. Evelyn walked in, her face unreadable. She took his phone and set it aside. "They're scared," she said simply. "When people are scared, they attack. But we knew this would happen." Jamal swallowed hard. "What if it doesn't change anything?" Evelyn sat beside him. "Then we keep fighting." At the precinct, tensions were boiling. Reporters camped outside, demanding statements. Internal Affairs had launched a full investigation, pulling officers in for questioning. Dawson and Holloway were suspended pending review, but not before Holloway cornered Jamal after school. Jamal was walking home when a cruiser slowed beside him. Holloway rolled down the window, his smile sharp. "Hey, kid, heard you've been telling stories." Jamal kept walking, his pulse pounding. Holloway's voice turned icy. "Better hope your mom's as powerful as you think, because when this blows over, you're gonna regret opening your mouth." The cruiser sped off, leaving Jamal shaking on the sidewalk. When he told Evelyn, her face went stone cold. She called Marcus Cole immediately. "They're threatening my son," she said, her voice low and dangerous. Marcus exhaled. "I'll put a patrol near your house." "But Evelyn, without proof, there's not much we can do." Evelyn hung up, her hands clenched. "We need leverage." That night, Malik came over, his eyes wide. "Yo, you're not gonna believe this." He pulled up a video on his phone, grainy security footage from a bodega near where Jamal had been arrested. The timestamp matched the night of Jamal's detention. In the video, Dawson and Holloway were visible, laughing as they walked out of the store. Dawson's voice was faint but clear. "Kid pissed himself when I cuffed him. Should have seen it." Jamal's stomach turned. "Where did you get this?" Malik grinned. "My cousin works at the store. Saw the article and remembered the cops coming in that night. Thought it might be useful." Evelyn took the phone, her eyes blazing. "This is it." She forwarded the video to Vanessa Cruz, who published an update within the hour. "New evidence emerges in police misconduct. Case officers caught mocking teen's arrest." The fallout was instant. By the next morning, Dawson and Holloway were officially under investigation for misconduct and intimidation. Sergeant Greer was placed on administrative leave, his own record under scrutiny. But the fight wasn't over. At school, Jamal faced a different kind of battle. Tyler Jacobs and his friends had doubled down, whispering "snitch" as he passed. Teachers watched him with wary eyes, as if waiting for him to explode. Then, in the middle of the cafeteria, Tyler slammed into him, sending Jamal's tray clattering to the floor. "Oops," Tyler sneered. "Guess you'll call the cops on me, huh?" Jamal's fist clenched, but before he could react, Principal Harris appeared. "Enough," he barked. "Tyler, my office. Now." As Tyler was led away, Malik nudged Jamal. "Looks like someone's finally getting consequences." Jamal exhaled. Maybe things were changing. That evening, Evelyn got a call from Marcus. "They're offering a deal," he said. "Dawson and Holloway will resign. No charges, in exchange for dropping the civil suit." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Number," Marcus sighed. "Evelyn, this is the best we're gonna get. A public trial could drag on for years. This way, they're gone." Evelyn looked at Jamal, who nodded. "We take the deal," she said. "But, on one condition. They admit wrongdoing, publicly." The next day, the department issued a statement. Officers Dawson and Holloway had resigned following an internal review. Their actions, the statement read, did not meet the standards of the police force. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. That night, Jamal and Evelyn sat on their porch, the air cool and quiet. "You did good, kid," Evelyn said softly. Jamal leaned into her shoulder. "We did good." For the first time in weeks, he felt like he could breathe. But as the stars blinked overhead, he knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning, because the system was still broken, and someone had to keep fighting. Part 6. The Aftermath. The resignations of Dawson and Holloway sent shockwaves through the precinct. But the silence from the department was deafening. No press conference, no formal apology. Just a sterile statement buried on their website. Evelyn knew better than to expect more. She had spent years watching the system protect its own. But as she scrolled through the news coverage headlines declaring victory, activists calling it a rare win. She couldn't shake the unease settling in her chest. This wasn't justice. It was damage control. Across town, Jamal sat in Malik's basement, the glow of the television casting shadows on their faces as a news anchor dissected the case. "Two bad apples," the anchor said smoothly. "But let's not forget the countless officers who serve with integrity." Malik muted the television with a scoff. "Bad apples? More like the whole damn tree's rotten." Jamal didn't answer. His phone buzzed a DM from an account he didn't recognize. He opened it, and his blood ran cold. A photo of him walking home from school. The caption, "Watch your back." Malik saw his face and grabbed the phone. "What the?" His voice dropped. "Yo, we gotta tell your mom." Jamal shook his head. "And what? They'll say it's just some troll. No proof it's connected to the cops." But his hands trembled. The threat was real. That night, Evelyn found Jamal sitting at the kitchen table, the photo pulled up on his laptop. She studied it, her expression hardening. "We're filing a police report." Jamal laughed bitterly. "To who? Their buddies?" Evelyn's voice was steel. "To the right people." She called Lisa Nguyen again. This time, Lisa didn't hesitate. "I'll handle it personally." The next morning, Jamal's photo was gone, the account deleted. But the damage was done. The fear had taken root. At school, whispers followed him. Some kids looked at him with awe, stood up to the cops. Others with suspicions niche. Even teachers seemed unsure how to treat him. Their smiles strained. Only Principal Harris treated him the same. He pulled Jamal aside after class. "You holding up?" Jamal shrugged. "Guess so." Harris nodded. "Good. Because I need your help." He led Jamal to the school's media lab, where a group of students some Jamal recognized from the Black Student Union were huddled around a laptop. On screen was a spreadsheet, names and dates meticulously logged. "What's this?" Jamal asked. Harris crossed his arms. "Every time a kid at this school's been unfairly targeted by police. Traffic stops, hall sweeps, random searches. Sound familiar?" Jamal's throat tightened. There were dozens of entries. One girl, Nia, looked up. "We're building a case. Show the district this isn't just about Utes, a pattern." Harris met Jamal's eyes. "You in?" For the first time since the arrest, Jamal felt something other than anger or fear. Purpose. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat across from Marcus Cole in his office, the air thick with tension. "You got them fired," Marcus said. "What more do you want?" Evelyn leaned forward. "Policy changes. Body cams that can't be tampered with. An independent review board for misconduct cases. Real consequences." Marcus sighed. "You're talking politics, Evelyn." "That takes time." She held his gaze. "Then I'll run for office." Marcus blinked. "What?" "City council. Then maybe DA when you retire." She smiled faintly. "Unless you're scared of competition." Marcus shook his head, but a grudging respect flickered in his eyes. "You're serious." "Deadly." That evening, Evelyn told Jamal her plan over dinner. His eyes widened. "You'd really do that?" She nodded. "Someone has to." Jamal pushed his plate aside. "Then I want to help. With the school's project, with everything." Evelyn reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "I was hoping you'd say that." The next week, Jamal and Nia presented their findings to the school board. The room was packed, students, parents, even reporters. When Jamal stepped to the mic, his voice didn't shake. "This isn't about me," he said. "It's about every kid who's been treated like a criminal for just existing. And it ends today." The board voted unanimously to end random police sweeps in schools. Afterward, as cameras flashed, Evelyn pulled Jamal aside. "Proud of you," she murmured. He hugged her tight. "We're just getting started." That night, Jamal lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The fear wasn't gone. The system wasn't fixed. But for the first time, he dared to hope. The school board victory made headlines, but Jamal barely had time to celebrate. His inbox flooded with messages, students from other districts, parents, even a few community organizers asking if he'd speak at rallies. Malik scrolled through Jamal's phone, whistling. "Bro, you're famous." Jamal snatched the phone back. Not the point. But it was hard to ignore the attention. Strangers recognized him at the grocery store. Reporters camped outside the school. Every interview request felt like another weight on his shoulders. Evelyn watched him closely. One night, she found him staring blankly at his laptop, a half-written speech glowing on the screen. "Hey," she said, sitting beside him. "You don't have to do all this alone." Jamal rubbed his eyes. "Then who's gonna do it?" Evelyn hesitated. "What if we built a team?" The next morning, she introduced him to Terrence Carter, a veteran activist who'd been organizing since the 90s. Terrence showed up in a faded hoodie and steel-toe boots, his voice gravelly but warm. "Your mom says you're ready to go bigger," he said. "You sure?" Jamal nodded. Terrence grinned. "Then let's get to work." They spent the next week mapping out a citywide campaign, student-led protests, policy demands, even a hotline for reporting police misconduct. Nia and Malik joined, along with a handful of others from neighboring schools. But not everyone was on board. At a planning meeting in Terrence's cramped office, a girl named Keisha crossed her arms. "Why's Jamal the face? Because his mom's a judge?" The room went quiet. Jamal clenched his jaw. "I never asked to be the face." Terrence held up a hand. "It's a fair question, but Jamal's got the spotlight now. We use that." He turned to Keisha. "You're pissed good. Channel it. You're leading the rally at City Hall." Keisha's eyes widened. "Me?" Terrence winked. "Unless you're scared," she scoffed. "Hell no." The tension broke, but Jamal couldn't shake Keisha's words. That night, he texted her. "You were right." She replied faster than he expected. "I know, but we need you. Just share the mic sometimes." He smiled. "Deal." Meanwhile, Evelyn's political plans were moving faster than expected. A retiring councilwoman offered her endorsement. And suddenly, donors were lining up. Marcus Cole called her, half amused. "You're really doing this?" Evelyn sorted through campaign flyers. "Got a problem with that?" Marcus sighed. "Just watch your back. The old guard won't go down easy." She already knew. At a private fundraiser, a police union rep cornered her near the bar. "Judge Carter," he said too sweetly, "heard your son's quite the activist." Evelyn sipped her water. "He is." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Be a shame if something distracted him from all that good work." Evelyn set her glass down slowly. "Let me be clear. If anything happens to my son, I won't need a badge or a gavel to handle it. Understood?" The man paled and walked away. The first rally was set for a Saturday downtown. Jamal spent the morning pacing his room, practicing his speech in the mirror. Evelyn knocked, holding out a small box. "For you." Inside was a silver chain with a pendanta clenched fist. Jamal's throat tightened. "Mom!" She fastened it around his neck. "You're ready." The crowd was bigger than they'd hoped. Hundreds packed the square, spilling into the streets. News helicopters circled overhead. Terrence spoke first, fiery and sharp. Then Keisha, who brought the crowd to its feet. When Jamal stepped up, the noise was deafening. He took a breath. "This isn't about me," he began. "It's about all of us. And we're not stopping until the system changes." The cheers shook the ground beneath him. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, a woman approached Jamal. She was older, her eyes tired but fierce. "My son was killed by cops last year," she said softly. "They called it justified." She pressed a folded note into his hand. "Keep fighting." Jamal watched her walk away, the note burning in his palm. That night, he unfolded it at his desk. A name, Darnell Wright, and a case number. Evelyn found him still sitting there hours later. "We can't just stop at us," he said hoarsely. She rested a hand on his shoulder. "I know." Outside, the city hummed, restless and alive. The movement had begun. The note with Darnell Wright's name stayed in Jamal's pocket for days, a quiet heaviness against his thigh. He tried to focus on school, on planning the next rally, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw the woman's face, the grief, etched into her expression like stone. One afternoon, he finally looked up the case. The articles were clinical: officer-involved shooting, suspect armed, investigation ongoing. But buried in the comments, a cousin had posted, "Darnell was holding his phone. They shot him anyway." Jamal's hands shook as he texted Terrence, "We need to talk about Darnell Wright." Terrence responded immediately, "Meet me at the office. Bring everything." When Jamal arrived, Terrence was already surrounded by stacks of files, his laptop open to a grainy bodycam video. He didn't look up as Jamal entered. "Sit," he said. Jamal watched the video in silence. The footage was shaky, the audio cutting in and out, but he saw the moment Darnell, hands raised, something small and dark in his grip. A shout. Then gunfire. The screen went black. Terrence exhaled. Cop said it was a gun. Family says it was his phone. Autopsy shows he was shot in the back. Jamal's stomach twisted. What happened to the officers? Paid leave. Then reinstated. Terrence leaned forward. This is what we're up against. Jamal swallowed hard. We have to do something. Terrence studied him. You sure? This isn't a rally. This is a war. Jamal didn't hesitate. I'm in. That night, he told Evelyn. She listened quietly, her fingers tapping against her knee. When he finished, she stood and walked to her desk, pulling out a thick folder. I've been tracking cases like this for years, she said, waiting for the right moment. She handed him the file. Now's the time. Jamal flipped through it, names, dates, reports, dozens of cases, hundreds. His chest ached. Evelyn's voice was steady. We take this public. All of it. The next morning, Jamal and Terrence met with Darnell's mother, Mrs. Wright, in her small apartment. Photos of Darnell covered the wall's graduation, birthdays, a life cut short. Mrs. Wright didn't cry as she spoke. They took my son. Then they called him a criminal. She gripped Jamal's hand. You make them say his name. Jamal nodded. We will. The plan was simple. A memorial march, ending at police headquarters. They'd read every name in Evelyn's file. They'd force the city to listen, but word traveled fast. The night before the march, Jamal's phone buzzed with an alert, a breaking news segment. The police chief was speaking, stern-faced. While we respect the right to protest, we will not tolerate violence or destruction of property. Officers will be present to ensure safety. Malik groaned. They're setting us up. Jamal knew he was right. The police were preparing for a riot tone they'd likely provoke. Evelyn called an emergency meeting at the house. Terrence, Nia, Keisha, and a few others crowded around the dining table, tension thick in the air. We cancel. A boy named Derek said, they're gonna use this as an excuse to crack heads. Keisha slammed her fist on the table. So we let them scare us off? That's what they want. Jamal looked at Terrence. What do we do? Terrence rubbed his temples. We go forward. But we're smarter. He pulled out a map. No confrontation. We march. We speak. We leave. No stops. No deviations. Evelyn nodded. And I'll be there. As a judge, they'll think twice before starting something. The morning of the march, the streets were already lined with barricades. Officers in riot gear standing watch. News vans lined the sidewalks. Jamal adjusted his clenched fist pendant and took his place at the front of the crowd. Mrs. Wright stood beside him, her hand clutching a photo of Darnell. Terrence gave the signal, and they began to move. The crowd was silent at first, the only sound the shuffling of feet. Then, one by one, voices rose, calling out names. Darnell Wright, Marcus Green, Aisha Reynolds. On and on, the list unspooled. A litany of lives lost. Jamal kept his eyes forward, his voice steady, even as he passed the stone-faced officers. Even as cameras flashed in his face, they reached headquarters. The steps were blocked by more officers, their expressions unreadable behind visors. Mrs. Wright stepped forward. My son was a good boy, she said, her voice carrying. And you killed him. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then, from the crowd, a single shout, Say his name! The response was thunderous. Darnell Wright! The officers shifted uncomfortably. One reached for his radio. Evelyn stepped forward, her judge's badge visible. Let them speak. The officer hesitated, then lowered his hand. One by one, families came forward, holding photos, telling stories. The sun dipped below the buildings, the sky turning orange, then purple. As the last name was read, Jamal felt something inside him crack open, not anger, not sadness, but resolve. This was just the beginning. The crowd dispersed peacefully, but Jamal lingered, watching the officers retreat behind their barricades. One, a young cop with tired eyes, met his gaze for a second before turning away. Maybe not all of them were beyond reach. Terrence clapped a hand on Jamal's shoulder. We did good today. Jamal nodded. Yeah, but we're not done. Evelyn joined them, her face weary but proud. Number. We're not. Together, they walked home, the city humming around them, alive with possibility. The march made headlines, but not the way Jamal expected. The local news spun it as a tense standoff, focusing on the riot gear, the barricadescent thing, but the names they'd chanted. National outlets barely covered it at all. Malik threw his phone onto Jamal's bed in disgust. They don't give a damn unless there's fire. Jamal scrolled through the articles, his jaw tight. Then we make them care. He called Terrence, who arrived with a stack of flyers and a grim smile. Time to hit them where it hurts. The plan was simple. A boycott. No school, no shopping, no business as usual until the city addressed their demands. Body cams, independent oversight, reopening Darnell's case. Evelyn helped draft the language, her legal precision sharpening their words. Make it clear, she said. This isn't a request, it's a mandate. The flyers spread faster than they'd hoped. By Monday morning, the school parking lot was half empty. Teachers stood in confused clusters, watching as students linked arms outside the gates. Principal Harris emerged, his expression unreadable. You know, I can't officially condone this. Jamal met his gaze. We're not asking you to. Harris sighed, then turned to the staff. Looks like we've got an unscheduled assembly. Let's move it outside. The teachers hesitated, then followed. Downtown, stores shuttered as picket lines formed. A grocery chain owned by a police union donor lost thousands in hours. Traffic snarled as protesters sat in at major intersections. The city noticed. By Wednesday, the mayor's office called Evelyn. They want to negotiate, she told Jamal, hanging up the phone. Terrence scoffed. They want us to stop. Jamal looked at the news footage, crowds growing, voices rising. Not yet. The mayor's offer came Friday. A task force. A review. No promises. The group gathered in Terrence's office, the air thick with frustration. They're stalling, Keisha snapped. Evelyn tapped her pen against the table. Then we forced their hand. That night, Jamal sat with Malik and Nia, scrolling through footage from the march. One clip caught his eye, a reporter interviewing a white woman who'd watched from her balcony. It's sad, sure, the woman said. But why disrupt everything? There are better ways, Nia groaned. Oh, of course. Ask nicely, and the system fixes itself. Jamal paused the video. We need her. Malik blinked. Who, Lady Privilege? Yeah. Jamal leaned forward. If people like her start feeling the pressure, the city will fold. The next morning, they targeted affluent neighborhoods, leafleting driveways, holding teach-ins outside yoga studios and coffee shops. Polite, persistent, unavoidable. The woman from the video found Jamal outside her favorite cafe. You're that boy from the news. Jamal handed her a flyer. And you're someone who cares about this city. Help us fix it. She stared at the paper, then at him. I'll think about it. It was a start. Meanwhile, Evelyn played the long game. She met quietly with city council members, leveraging her judicial clout. You can side with us, she said, or you can be remembered as the politicians who let this city burn. The pressure built. Then, the break. An officer from the march, the young cop who'd met Jamal's gaze, contacted Terrence anonymously. They're scared. The message read, internal emails say to settle before election season. Terrence showed Jamal the words. We've got them. The next day, the mayor announced a press conference. The group watched from Evelyn's living room as the mayor, flanked by the police chief and weeping families, unveiled a sweeping reform package. Body cams, an independent review board, a fresh investigation into Darnell's death. Keisha burst into tears. Nia hugged her. Jamal sat very still, his heart pounding. It wasn't over, but it was something. That night, he stood with Evelyn on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and violet. She squeezed his shoulder. You changed things. He leaned into her touch. We all did. Somewhere in the city, a siren wailed, then faded. The fight would go on. But today, they'd won. Part 10. The Legacy. The city's reforms rolled out slowly, but Jamal watched each change with quiet satisfaction. Body cameras appeared on officers' uniforms within months. The Independent Review Board held its first public hearing, airing grievances that had been buried for years. And Darnell Wright's case was reopened, his name finally spoken in court without the weight of lies pressing it down. But the work didn't stop there. Jamal and Terrence expanded their network, training students in other districts to organize. Keisha took the lead on a youth outreach program, teaching younger kids their rights during police encounters. Malik, ever the strategist, built a social media presence that kept the movement visible even when the news cycle moved on. Evelyn won her city council seat by a landslide. The night of her victory, she stood on stage, Jamal beside her, and looked out at the cheering crowd. "This isn't just my win," she said. "It's yours, and we're just getting started." Back at home, she pulled Jamal into a rare, fierce hug. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "Couldn't have done it without you." Life settled into a new rhythm. Jamal graduated high school with honors, his acceptance letter to Howard University waiting on his desk. Nia was headed to Spelman, Malik to Morehouse. Keisha, ever the firebrand, deferred for a year to work full-time with Terrence. The night before Jamal left for college, the group gathered in Terrence's cramped office one last time. Terrence handed Jamal a worn notebook, years of organizing strategies, contacts, hard-won lessons. "Don't let those professors water you down," he said, grinning. Jamal flipped through the pages, recognizing notes from their first meetings, scribbled plans for rallies, even the crumpled speech he'd given at the school board hearing. "I'll add to it," he promised. Nia tossed him a hoodie with their group's logo, a raised fist inside an open book. "So you don't forget where you came from." Malik fake punched his shoulder. "And so you don't get too boring without us." Jamal laughed, but his chest ached. These were his people, his family. The next morning, Evelyn drove him to the airport. They didn't speak much, the weight of the moment settling between them. At security, she straightened his chained, clenched fist pendant, still hanging from his neck. "Call me when you land," she said. He nodded. "Always." Then he walked forward, into the next chapter. College was a whirlwind, new faces, new ideas, new battles to fight. Jamal joined the Student Activist Coalition his first week, bringing Terrence's notebook to every meeting. He wrote op-eds, organized teach-ins, even helped shut down a lecture by a notoriously racist professor. But he also learned, listened, grew. Winter break brought him home to a city that felt both familiar and changed. The reforms were working, but not perfectly. There were still fights to be had. Mrs. Wright met him for coffee, her eyes brighter than he'd ever seen them. "They fired the officers," she said. "Not enough, but it's something." Jamal squeezed her hand. "We'll keep pushing." Evelyn, now Councilwoman Carter, had legislation in the works, a community oversight board with real power, funding for youth programs, even a pilot project for mental health responders instead of cops. "You're making waves," Jamal told her over dinner. She smirked. "Learned from the best." The years passed. Jamal graduated, came home, and took over Terrence's organization when the older man finally retired. Keisha, now a city council member herself, became his fiercest ally in government. Malik ran their communications, Nia their legal team. And then, one ordinary Tuesday, Jamal got a call from a high school student he'd never met. "They suspended me for protesting the new school resource officer," the kid said, voice shaking with anger. "They said I was causing trouble." Jamal leaned back in his chair, smiling. "Tell me everything." That weekend, he stood at the back of a packed school auditorium, watching as a new generation of students demanded change. Their signs were sharper, their chants louder, their fearlessness breathtaking. Afterward, a girl with braids and a determined set to her jaw approached him. "You're Jamal Carter, right?" He nodded. She thrust out a flyer. "We're organizing citywide. You in?" He took the paper, the weight of it familiar in his hands. "Yeah," he said, "I'm in." That night, he sat at his desk, Terrence's notebook open beside him. He turned to a fresh page and began to write. The work wasn't over. It never would be. But as he looked out the window at the city lights glowing in the distance, he knew one thing for certain: they had built something that would last. And that was enough.